Hi there. Hi there. A very good evening and welcome to another session of our crash course. Man, hats off to you. I mean, you guys are able to go through so much of practice. You guys are able to attend so many of these sessions that it is absolutely lovely and remarkable to see that. It is this persistence which is going to show you the right result. For those of you who are new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. My name is Vikrant. I'm your coach for all things related to English and communication skills. And today, as you can see, we'd basically be doing an analysis of the open mock 4. So unlike a lot of other sessions, once we reach the last week, I at least try to take things a little easy. You should also have you should also chill out a little. Get some break. Matlab aaj savere in the afternoon and exactly at the noon for that matter, I did not even take you through your RCs and parajumbles today. We just talked about vocabulary and let's just go ahead and learn some new words. Kaushal, a very, very happy Chhath Puja to those of you who are celebrating. And let's go ahead and start talking about what we plan to do today. So here is what I have on the agenda for you. Ta-da! So I am going to talk about the relationship. I mean, we are doing an open mock analysis, but why? What is the point? Why do we need to do that? Well, I need to give you a relationship. So I want to talk about the relationship between the percentile that you get in our mocks and the percentile that you end up getting in the actual CAT, exam, right? So that's why it is a little important. I'd also talk about what is happening. I will also talk about CAT score versus percentile. Thereafter, we'll dive into the mapping or the relationship between CAT 2022, the last year's CAT, and the mock 22, or as some of you know it, in case you are not a BYJU'S student, then this was our All India Open Mock 4. Right? So that's what we basically had. Fair enough? So that's what we are really looking at. Then we'd go ahead and specifically talk about VARC, particularly how we attempt it. And then we'd look at, sorry, I wrote 3 accidentally, for the discussion of that 4th mock. So let's start with the percentile of the mock versus actual. Now this is something that is based on the data that we gathered last year. So last year what we saw was that people who wrote our mock, so say somebody was getting 50 percentile in the mock conducted here at BYJU'S. When their actual CAT results came out, we realized that they were actually getting 70 percentile. So somebody who was getting 50 percentile in the mock ended up getting 70 percentile in the actual exam. And similarly, there are these bands for each one of these percentile levels. So this essentially talks a bit about the level of competition that you get here. You are competing against people who are absolutely amazing, and therefore I think participating particularly in all these open mocks becomes very important, very useful, very relevant. To take you a little further, here is the score versus percentile chart for you for the actual CAT exams of the last 3 years, as well as the mock 22 or the All India Open Mock 4 that you attended. So henceforth I'd be calling that mock 22. Okay, so the first column gives you total marks. This is a dream for most of us, but let's just focus on one of these columns. Okay, let's pick this up because this generally means that for most of us, we'd be able to get most of the calls. So in CAT 22, anybody who could score 93 was in the top 0.5% of the country. But in CAT 21, you needed to score more marks to reach that same level, which tells you that CAT 21 was relatively easier. But then look at mock 22. 100. A total score of 100 led to that same position. So the overall difficulty level was, I think, somewhere between CAT 21 and CAT 22, right? Very, very nearly there to CAT 22, very nearly there to CAT 21. I'm not looking at 2020 because the total number of marks was higher and all those things. So I'm focusing more on 21 and 22. Let us specifically look at the VARC bit. Okay, I think I am eating into a lot of it. So let's specifically talk about the VARC bit of it. Anybody who got 38.5 was in the top 1% of CAT 22. CAT 21, because the section was relatively easier, you needed to score around 45 marks. So in terms of questions, can I say that you needed around 13 questions to 15 questions net correct? Fair enough? So 13 questions to 15 questions net correct would have led to your being in the top 1%. Now, where does mock 22 stand in comparison to the last 2 years? So here is that piece of data for you. So look at this. We got tantalizingly close to it. So somebody who got 39 here got 99 percentile in the section. And actually, in a way, I'll tell you, if you got 39 and you have a 99 percentile here, in the actual exam, you're going to get a higher percentile, right? In the actual exam, your percentile is actually going to be higher. I showed you that a little while ago, right? People who got 99 percentile in the mocks ended up getting more than 99.5 percentile in the actual CAT exam. People who were getting 95 percentile here ended up getting between 97 and 98 there. So imagine, even if you could score 31, you had 95 percentile here, but this actually means that in the actual exam scenario, if you are here, you would have been in that 97 percentile to 98 percentile bracket. Okay, so let's just look at a couple of messages that have popped in. Sunny scored 40 in VA. Man, so definitely crossed 99 percentile. So 40, thanks to Sunny, we know that if you score 40, then you got 99.07 percentile. And Sunny, that's amazing. Huh? We're struggling with quant. Sunny, in that case, just reach out to one of the faculty members who takes care of quant, right? And that should essentially help you with it. Fair enough, right? So CAT mock 22. So basically this slide is here to tell you that the mock was actually a very accurate representation of the actual CAT exam, and if you were there, chances are that you would have done an even better job. And then let me take you through an analysis of CAT 22 very quickly, and I'm doing that for a very specific reason. So that analysis will end up taking the entire slide. So what I'll do is I'll hide myself briefly, and then we will get into that. So I have this slide because, you see, let's just start with slot 1. Focus on level of difficulty. You see this. Then slot 2. Then slot 3. And then of course there is this normalization that happens, but the idea is no matter which slot you write, you typically find one RC passage which is easy, and usually it is going to be 1 to 2 RC passages which are easy, and if not easy, then at least easy to moderate. So what does that tell you? Do not go from passage 1 to passage 4 in the sequence in which they appear. It is extremely important for you to prioritize the passages, figure out the order in which you want to go ahead and attempt the passages. So choose your battles carefully. Pick up only those passages to begin with that are easy for you. Similarly, if you look at the verbal ability section, you notice in each one of these three sections, you have something or the other that can be termed easy. So in slot 1, it was para summary. In slot 2, it was para completion. In slot 3, it was, okay, once again, para completion, which was easy to moderate. I ended up getting into CAT mock 80. So this is mock, should have been 22, but mock 22, where you once again see that where that higher difficulty level is coming from, right? We've not given you any passage which can outright be called easy in that sense. So you just need to go ahead and do that comparison, and therefore just go through the entire section, decide on which passage or which questions you want to start with, figure out what has been working for you so far, and then stick to that. So what is the first thing that you do? What's the first thing that you would typically go on and do in this particular section? How do you go about dealing with it? Tell me. Let me just make some room for myself on the slide, and then we can start talking once again. So just give me one brief second. Here we go. There we are. So let's review our approach, and of course along with it solve some questions. So tell me, how do you go ahead and approach? Tarun, when I perform well in RC, my VS score drops and vice versa. Tarun, do you change the time that you take for every question then? Do you tinker with that? Vikram, wouldn't that waste some time picking the order? Bilkul, absolutely. So I will tell you what I do. Okay, I'll just run you through my approach. So the first thing that I do in the exam, the very first thing that I do is I look for para summary questions. Now, why do I look for para summary? I treat para summary as a warm-up for RC. Why? What are we supposed to do in para summary? We are supposed to read a paragraph, take out all the key ideas of that paragraph. What are we supposed to do in reading comprehension? The first thing that we do is we read the passage and take out all the key ideas of every paragraph when you're generating that mental overview. So para summary to me in a way is as I said, in fact, a warm up for my para jumble. So that's the first question type that I start with. So once I am done with para summaries, then I switch over to reading comprehension. In fact, I think I should start numbering them. So that's 1, that's 2. Now within reading comprehension, the first thing that I do is passage prioritization. So typically I give myself 10 seconds per passage, and my recommendation normally to everybody is that you generally give around 15 to 20 seconds per passage. I think over the years I've become more proficient, so I end up taking lesser time, but 10 to 20 seconds would generally be sufficient. So 15 to 20 seconds per passage. Now what do you do in these 15 to 20 seconds? You look at that passage. Now should you look at the beginning? No. What I generally do is I look at the middle. I read a few lines from the middle. So I'll give you two different approaches. You can read the first line of every paragraph, or you can go to the middle of the passage and read a bit of it there. So whatever works better for you, you can go ahead and use that. The idea is to arrive at or to have an assessment of the level of familiarity that we have with a passage. Right? So familiarity in terms of the language that is used in the passage. Am I comfortable with it? Familiarity in terms of the subject matter of the passage. Do I find it easy? So those kind of things. Okay. So 15-20 seconds at the max per passage would basically mean what? Just a minute and a quarter of a minute more, and you'd be done. So that's the first thing that I do. So on the basis of this, I determine the order in which I want to go through those passages. That's basically it. And that order will obviously differ from person to person because the journey of her life is different. What is easy for you may not be easy for the others, in terms of language, subject matter, etc. Now at this level, some people say that should I also look at the question types that are there after a particular passage? I normally am not a big fan of that, and that is because you just have a finite number of question types. So if I talk about the CAT exam, there are just 19 different question types that you get in the exam conventionally. So you can master each one of those 19 question types, and that makes that question, should I look at the question types, moot. The difficulty in a question thereafter is not determined by the type of the question. The difficulty then is determined by the answer choices, how close they are or how far they are. So it is that particular aspect which goes ahead and determines it. And that essentially takes care of it. So that is how I would go ahead and look at it. Let me just go ahead and some of the messages too. After a year of preparation, marks not consistent. Yeah, Karthik, I think I've addressed this earlier as well. If your score in VARC is fluctuating, it normally indicates just this one thing, that we are using a little more of intuition while choosing the answers. So just look at, do you have a solid reason for choosing the answer that you've chosen? So it's just the quality of those reasons that requires work. So there are times when in our haste, we just go by our instinct, and instinct can lead to fluctuating scores, unfortunately. So coming back to this, once I have figured out my order, and you know what I do? Okay, let me give you the entire process that I did. So I look at the first passage. The first passage, I'll give it some marks. I start with 6 marks. Why 6? Because it's middle of the line. Okay. Let's say the next passage is easier. So if it is easier, it will get a smaller number. So let's say 4. So the third passage I find is tougher. So it will get a higher number than 6. So let us say an 8. And then the fourth passage I find that, oh, this is very easy for me. So I may end up giving it just a 2 or a 1. So I just allocate this number which indicates the comparative difficulty level, and I start with the smallest number. So this is the first passage that I'd attempt. This is the second passage that I'd attempt. This is going to be the third one that I attempt, and this is going to be the fourth one. So what do I do here? I definitely attempt 2 passages. So thereafter, I attempt 2 passages for sure. There are times when I think that the RC is overall easy according to me. So I may also go ahead and attempt the third passage as well. So 2 to 3 passages. Now, once I am done with these 2 to 3 passages, the next thing that I do is I go back to VA, and within VA, if I happen to have a paragraph odd one out, now that we have this 5th question type in the mix, I generally keep it for the end, para completion. So this is a sequence that works for me. Should you follow this sequence? No. There's a sequence that is built around my strengths, my level of comfort with different question types, my analysis of the time that I take to answer every question. So this is the order in which I generally end up approaching these. Would you have some different sequence? Absolutely, yes, why not? But by now, you need to have that clarity of the sequence that works for you, and then make sure that you stick to it. And then don't be very rigid about it either. At the end of the day, it all boils down to the difficulty level of the paper. What if RC is very difficult? Would I still insist on attempting 2 passages before I go to VA? Not really. I won't. So I'll keep that in mind. So at the end of the day, we need to go from easy questions to difficult questions. The order that I have shared with you here is historically the order that works for me. And similarly, Vikram says, so you usually do not attempt all 4? No, I do. After this, I do come back and then I attempt the 4th RC passage as well. But then this is a juncture. This is something which depends on the difficulty level of the 4th RC passage. So in fact, I shouldn't even write 6. Let's just put a star. I will do it somewhere between 3, 4 and 5, depending upon the overall analysis of the situation. But yes, mostly I end up doing it in the end. So over the years, I've built up enough speed to finish the entire section, attempt all the 24 questions. So I typically attempt all of them. I may leave one question or occasionally 2 questions out, but otherwise I attempt all. But does that mean that you're supposed to attempt all of them? Not at all. For some of you, so for me, English is my strength. This is where I gain over the competition. I in fact do not even mark my answers to DILR and Quant in the actual exam. I only mark my English answers, and you won't believe, only the English score has given me 86 percentile to 96 percentile in the exam. So this is where I leave the competition behind in the dust. But then maybe English is not your strong suit. In that case, you can be a little more reasonable and decide which question types you are least comfortable with, and then maybe you leave that out first or whatever. So right, Hitansh, let us take this after this. Let's take it up after the session, huh? So this is my approach. Similarly, so I've shared this basically to talk about this singular fact that you also need to kind of have some approach that works for you. There are a lot of messages which are coming on the app as well. VARC safe score for FMS. Mohan, as FMS does give a slightly higher weightage to the score of the English section, but how do I define safe? Yeah, at the end of the day, your overall percentile needs to be great, and in order to get that great percentile, I am sure you cannot do that without being reasonably good in English. But yes, to be on the safe side, try to be in the top 5% for sure. Then Shweta has shared her sequence. Okay, if that works for you. Mohan says 3 RCs and then all the VA 2 RCs. Okay, terrific. Oh man, a lot of these things. Mohan, it's absolutely all right. Yeah, it's absolutely okay if you're not getting time for the 4th RC passage. Right, so by now you have worked hard, you know what works for you. And see, frankly speaking, even if you could attempt just say 18 questions with 80% accuracy, which basically means leaving 6 questions out, 1 entire passage out, maybe 2 VA questions out, even then you are going to be very, very close to being in the top 1%. So do not worry at all. Okay, Priyabrat says accuracy level of para-jumble is an issue. Let's solve a couple of para-jumble questions when we are at it today. Let us see, maybe that the fine-tuning of the approach can help you. So let's move on. So what is the first thing that we do in RCs? We go ahead and look at passage. You notice we are getting something that is based on astronomy. I think this itself, within 10 seconds, you can figure out your level of comfort with the subject matter, etc. Right? Okay, just a quick heads up. How many of you have actually gone ahead and written mock 22 or written All India Open mock 4, the last one that we conducted? Radha, we know it's not time that rusts us. Time may rust our bodies. It does not rust our spirit. And as far as VARC goes, it is not time, it is lack of practice that rusts us. When we rest, we rust. So make sure that you do not rest. And that will ensure that we rust. That we do not rust, sorry. Haji, you've written mock 22? Okay, Arnav has, Mohan has. Okay, so let's go through, let's solve this one passage together at least now that we are here. Can you just read it quickly? I will also read it, and it's been a while since I read that last, so I'll also read it with you, and then we'll move over to the next slide. Nana, Sunny, then if a strategy is working for you, why tinker with it? Don't do anything then. Just stick to it. Ishwar, absolutely you have, but some of us have not read it. Besides, we solved it quite a while ago, yaar. है ना? So we need to refresh our memory. Okay, so here is the next part of the passage. So let me give you that time to others to refresh that memory, huh? That was for you, Ishwari. Hitansh, absolutely yes. That's my answer to your Eon helps to improve the RCs. Yeah, it does, of course, man. Done? So just read it quickly. Okay, here is the last part of the passage. So I hope that refreshes your memory. So one of the things that we need to be aware of is that, okay, hey, when I get something from astronomy, which is science, how comfortable am I with this subject matter? Right? And thereafter, you just need to look at the language and see how comfortable I am. Then we have questions. So the very first question asked us, the author of the passage is most likely to support which one of the following statements. So this, what do we look for in this question type? This is mostly an inference based question, and occasionally it asks us to choose what is consistent with the passage. So anything that is true according to the passage or anything that is consistent with the passage, with the ideas that are shared in the passage is going to be our answer. Now, this is something that should be in your mind pat on. I don't want you to spend any time thinking of what this question means or how to approach it. So the moment I read it, this is something that is clear in my mind. Then I start going over to the answer choices. Okay, so you have option A, jumbos have stronger gravitational forces than previously thought of for low mass binary objects. Fantastic. So is this true? Is it false? Is it can't say? I think on the basis of this passage, this is true, because according to the scientists, they should have been torn apart according to their estimates of the gravitational forces, and because they have not been torn apart, what does that tell you? Right? Then B, the Webb telescope is not equipped to detect low mass binary objects such as jumbos. False, because according to the passage, it is that telescope that has discovered these. So if it is not equipped to detect them, how did it discover it? Then C, the reason as to why small binary objects are in pairs can be explained. False. According to the passage, the scientists are baffled by the phenomenon. Go back to the second paragraph and you would find the answers. And jumbos are essentially failed stars, cannot be determined or can't say. According to the passage, the brown dwarfs are the ones that are called failed stars. Are jumbos failed stars? Not something that we can base on this passage. And in such a question, in an inference based question, which one do we go ahead and choose as our answer? Anything which is true. Right? Then have a look at the next question type. what is the fundamental conclusion that can be reached from this statement? Orion is really massive and really dense. Do we find the same thing happens in a sparse region? This is where vocabulary would come into picture. If you do not know the meaning of sparse, this is a question which will suddenly become difficult for you. So by the way, this is something that comes from the last paragraph. When I was going through this, I was just eliminating. So I looked at A, eliminated, looked at B, eliminated. Why did I eliminate the two? I eliminated the two because they are not even talking about the comparison between a dense and a sparse region. And because they're not even talking about that, they cannot be the right answer. So the right answer had to be either C or D. And between the two, if you go back to the passage, let me just quickly take you back to the passage. It is in the last paragraph, right? Here it is. Look at the context. That might give us a clue of what formation mechanism might be happening. And this is a formation mechanism for what? This is the formation mechanism for jumbles. Right? Now that I am armed with that context, look at C and D. Now D is not talking about jumbos, D is talking about stars. So this is definitely a mistake. C could have been made better by mentioning jumbos, but D is definitely worse, and therefore D gets eliminated and C gets chosen as the answer. So you notice, that's how we can go ahead and solve these quicker. Similarly, let's have a look at the third. The author discusses all of the following arguments in the passage except. Now the key thing here is retention of the passage. Do I remember the key ideas that have been mentioned? So let's check A. Astronomers are perplexed as to how and why low mass binary objects exist in pair. Definitely, this is in fact the subject matter of the passage. B. They are extremely confused. Yup, they are baffled. This is mentioned. Something about the Orion Nebula still baffles scientists. Yes, they are called jumbos, and sparse regions are not conducive to jumbo formation. No, this is inconsistent with the passage. The author is curious to see what happens in sparse regions. The author has nowhere said that we will not see these there. So this is inconsistent with the passage. Therefore, the answer becomes D. We at the end of the day look at that except. So that in a way makes it an odd one out question. Let's have a look at question number 4. Which one of the following statements is definitely not untrue? Let's simplify it. Not and un are ruled out. So which one of the following is definitely true? It is. Now what is it going to be? At this juncture, I know that it is going to be either an inference question or a specific detail question. Okay. So let's hope that it's a specific detail question, because that will make it easier for us to answer it. So some failed stars can be many times the size of our sun. There is no comparison given between brown dwarfs and the sun in the passage, and therefore can't say or cannot be determined. Rule out. Stars have greater gravitational forces than do jumbos. True. Jumbos are several times the mass of Jupiter. Not necessarily true. Why? There is this one paragraph where they've told us that they are several times the mass of Jupiter, but then there is another paragraph where they say that they can be they can have half the mass of Jupiter. So anywhere between half the mass to several times the mass. So to say that jumbos are several times the mass of Jupiter is not true. D can only partially explain. No, it is not able to explain it at all. So false. So which one of these is true? B. So let's choose B as our answer. So you notice there are these two key things that I'm bringing here. The first is I am very sorted in terms of the interpretation of the questions and approach to the questions. So I know there are only 19 question types. I read it. I immediately know which one of those 19 types it is. I immediately know which approach to follow. And then when I go to the answer choices, I start rolling out that particular approach, and it mostly involves elimination. right? So that was our first passage. Here is the next one. What do you think? This passage for you is easier than the previous one or tougher than the previous one for you? Then give me that answer within 10 seconds, 15 seconds, चलो 15 सेकेंड दिए तुमको, और बताओ. Tarun, our classes, baby, our classes, yaar. We have a dedicated session on RC question types, and out of those 19, I would say that almost 5 odd question types are very low frequency. 5 to 6 are actually very low frequency. You just need to master 12, 13 question types basically. Okay, so easier, but then this is determined, this is based on our level of familiarity. So this is a passage that dives into psychology. For me it was easier and that is because I've done my masters in psychology. So I read it and I was like, yaar ye to aasan sa hi tha, kyunki padha hua hai maine, na. So but for some of you it could be an issue. For some of you it could be an issue because as you proceed further, it does bring in some technical things. You know, things like, you notice this Gestalt familiarity hypothesis, right? Gestalt familiarity hypothesis basically is that we are familiar with the configuration of objects in a three-dimensional space. Or in other words, we have a tendency to group various elements when they form a meaningful or relevant scene for us. But if you're somebody who's not familiar with it, this could have been a bit of a challenge. So then we have this question. Don't worry, we are not attempting it. The video solution for all of these questions is available for you to go through at leisure on BYJU'S Exam Prep app. I'm sure by now you must have done that too. In case you haven't, you can go ahead and do that now. So this is essentially what? A main idea question. So what did I do? I started eliminating perfunctory. This brings in something alien, ruled out. A few common fallacies, for no fallacies mentioned, alien, ruled out. A scientific catalytic work into the mechanism of deja vu, that's pretty close. How about D? A scientific discourse into the reasons for experiencing. The reasons have not been mentioned except briefly. So this is something that is a narrow option, whereas C is more representative of the passage, so I picked it up. So A and B, irrelevant. Alien, D narrow, C broader as compared to D, so it becomes the answer. Then how about sixth? Now this is something that by now I want you to have kind of mastered. All of the following statements, if false, could be seen as being in accordance with the passage, except. Now personally I don't like this, because if false basically means I need to go to every answer choice and take the opposite. So I try and see if I can convert this if false into true. So in this case it is easy because false and except will cancel out. So all I need to do is, which of the following is in accordance with the passage, and the moment you've arrived at here, you know that it is going to be either an inference question or a fact-based specific detail question, and it eventually turned out to be the answer. Then according to the passage, the Gestalt familiarity hypothesis is, now this is something that could be gleaned from the last paragraph. So this is more of a comprehension question where you needed to refer to the last paragraph in order to figure out the answer. And since I already told you what Gestalt familiarity hypothesis is, I think it is easy for us to figure out that it was D. And even otherwise, I would say that B and C were ridiculously easy to eliminate. Just even a cursory read of the last paragraph will tell you that B and C are definitely not correct. right? Then 8th, not unlikely. So not and un get cancelled. So which of the following is likely to be supportive of the author's opinion? So what is that? This is a strengthening the argument question. And how do we strengthen an argument? We provide additional support for the conclusion, or we provide additional support for the reasons that are already mentioned in the passage. Yeah, absolutely, Sunny. Absolutely, yes. Had the except not been there, I would change false into true and reverse the other side. Yes. Right. So in 8th, if you look at this particular question, there is only one option which was strengthening it, and that was B. Every other answer choice actually ended up weakening it. It was contradicting something or the other that was mentioned in the passage. So A had this only, C, it was not given as physical and mental dysfunction, not physical. So something or the other. And then wholly related, no, they're also related to conversations, etc. So it was easy for us to eliminate. Elimination would have actually made this easier. Then 3rd. Now you notice at the beginning I told you that when it comes to passage prioritization, you look at either the first sentence of every paragraph or you read the middle of the passage. Are we clear on that? Why did I say that? I said that because the opening paragraph can at times be misleading. If you look at the opening paragraph here, you'd think that, oh, this is a subject matter that I'm familiar with. I know about influencers. But the moment you move over to the second paragraph, what do you see? It becomes philosophy. Good versus popular. And that is why we should not base our judgment on familiarity using the beginning of the passage ever. Beginning can be misleading. I can start off a passage by talking about Virat Kohli and then take you into psychology. As this passage, you can start off by talking about influencers and then dive into philosophy. So I think for a lot of us, this would probably be challenging as compared to the first two passages. Definitely more challenging than the first passage. But then I've read the entire Republic by Plato. So when you go through this, I know what is being talked about. I have digested this information already. Right? And then I am a teacher who teaches online. So this resonated with me. Good versus popular teachers. So this overall presented something that was very familiar to me, and therefore I looked at it and I was like, acha, easy, yeah. But then I think being well read does have its own advantages. And then look at the questions. Which one of the following would add the least depth? So least strengthens. So are you comfortable with strengthening and weakening questions? If yes, this should be an easy question for you. If no, then this can be challenging. And in fact, here, when I went through the answer choices, I realized that C contradicts the main theme itself. Look at C. Most popular influencers tend to have a positive effect on their viewers. Whereas what does the author say? The author is of the opinion that people who are popular are not necessarily, are usually not good. So because C is contradicting it, obviously this is going to weaken. This will not at all strengthen. Whereas A, B and D were irrelevant. They were neither strengthening nor weakening. So the answer choices actually made it an easy question for me. And thus I ended up choosing C. Then 10th. Is that question type where we are asked about the purpose of an instance, the purpose of an example. So in such a question type, what do? I go back to the right paragraph. I am able to do that because I have that mental overview. And after that, I know that every example is supposed to explain an idea or support an idea. So I look at the answer choices and I see one of these ideas gets explained or supported by that example. I need to mark that as my answer. So if you don't have that clarity, if you have this ambiguity here that, what is it that I'm looking for, then that lack of clarity can of course reflect in your answer choice. So the correct answer here is D. A lot of people actually, when I was looking at the analysis, the meta-analysis of the paper, and there were quite a few people who were confused by A. So the enemy of the good will be extraneous, incapable of appreciating the good, did not come from that particular example. It was actually irrelevant to that example. And then the next one, we've already gone through a similar question type, so I'd not spend any more time on this. And then the next, weaken. So how do we weaken? So challenge, you need to challenge or contradict the reasons or the assumptions. That's all. That's all weakening means. So I need to figure out what the author's claim is. I need to figure out the reasons that the author has cited behind that claim. And then I'll go to the answer choices and see, is there any answer choice that challenges or contradicts the reasons that are mentioned here? If I find it, the question is solved. If I don't find it, then I go that extra mile and I think of that, okay, what is the assumption that the author has used? And then I see, is there any answer choice that challenges or contradicts that assumption? And why do I follow it? Why do I follow this order? The reasons first and the assumptions later. Assumptions requires an extra step, an extra level, an extra degree. And therefore, we have it there. So by now you've gone through this, so you would know that the answer is B. And let's skip the fourth one. The fourth is more about anthropology or sociology. I think mostly sociology actually. So fourth is a lot closer to sociology. It will also fall under anthropology for that matter. So culture with respect to human society would also can be studied under this. Oh, and I loved it when they talked about MoMA. So once again, if you're familiar with sociology, you should find it easier. And in fact, I think most of you should have found it easier compared to the third passage, because unlike philosophy, sociology is usually easier to read. It does not have much of a jargon. Passages based on sociology normally will not have a dense not have high density. They won't have a lot of key ideas in the passage, whereas passages based on philosophy can at times be very dense. They can have a lot of key ideas packed into the passage. So when I look at it, my order for this would have been maybe I found, so my order for these would actually have been 2, 1, 4 and 3 maybe. But yours can be different. So I'm skipping this. You can go through all these questions in our video solutions. We have of course discussed each one of these thoroughly here. And after that, we of course had verbal ability. The very first question, question number 17, was a parajumble. And since quite a few of you have talked to me about parajumbles causing a problem, let's work on this question together. So let's see how I would approach it. The very first thing that I do is I read all the sentences, and while reading, I keep on identifying the clues. So you notice the first sentence says volatile organic compounds and then uses VOCs. Whereas look at third, look at fourth, they are just using VOC. This tells us that sentence 3 and sentence 4 should definitely come after sentence 1. So it's just a clue, such an obvious clue that gives us some input about their sequence. Okay, let's move further. Look at the idea of sentence 3 and sentence 4. Sentence 4 is talking about the team, talking about plants and how they interpret the danger signals, whereas 3 is talking about specific VOCs. 4 is talking about VOCs. 3 is talking about specific VOCs. 4 is talking about all plants. 3 is talking about specific cells within plants. So on the basis of this, can I say that 3 and 4 both are talking about a similar idea, but 3 is more specific than 4. And in most of the academic essays, we go from general to specific. Therefore, I need to have 3 coming after 4. Fair enough? Now that we have reached this far, let's just combine. So I know that it needs to be 1, 4, 3, right? So let's look at likely locations. Okay, let me just highlight the likely locations. This is one likely location. This is another, this is another, this is another. But then, because it says their research, the first location is blocked off. We can't put it here. It has to come after 1. Can I put it at this second location? See, sentence 2 talks about profound insights into the intricate communication mechanism. So if I put 2 here, the sentences that come afterwards should go ahead and talk about those insights. But 3 and 4 are not talking about the insights, they're talking about the mechanism. So 2 can't go here, and 2 cannot go at between 4 and 3 as well, for the same reason that the moment you put 2, you need to go ahead and write insights. But then 3 also does not have insights. So the only place for 2 now is the last place. So I will put 2 here, and therefore our answer to this parajumble is 1, 4, 3, 2. Now you notice I have a reason for this sequence. A lot of us at times do not work with clues, word based, idea based, whichever way they come in, and that is something that creates a problem. That is something that creates a difficulty. Right? So that is how I've repeatedly reminded you that we are supposed to approach parajumbles. And then, but then, you know, these are theta questions. These are non-MCQs, and therefore you must attempt them even if you have no time. Take a random guess. You remember Gautam Baba, GB? GB talks about his special formula, his special ways of guessing about a parajumble, that where the guess would usually have a very low probability. After all, there are 4 factorial ways of arranging these. But then GB has noticed that there are some patterns which are more likely to occur. He must have shared it in one of his sessions. If he hasn't, ask him when you meet him in the next session and he will share that with you. So use that. So that's how we approach parajumbles. But I would normally not start with parajumbles. I would normally start with para summary. So what do? When I read a para summary, I identify key ideas. So in question number 18, I noticed that there were 2 key ideas. And I have put them in the square brackets. Let me highlight them too. मजा आ रहा है, बड़े दिनों से highlighter use नहीं किया मैंने sessions में. So I know, yeah, these are the 2 key ideas. Everything else that you have in this paragraph is detail. So if you give me an answer choice that gives me both of these, I am done. So option A, liberals stress profits over, okay, so A is incomplete because it does not mention fascism. So it suffers from, you know my labels by now, deletion of second idea. So if this is idea 1, this is idea 2. B, the fundamental, now this introduces something alien. Notice addition, so-called. When you use so-called, it means that they are not what you are talking them. So when I say so-called children, it means that I don't consider them children. So-called intellectuals, I don't consider them intellectuals. So so-called liberals will mean I don't consider them liberals. But here in this paragraph, you do consider them liberals. So that's an addition. Additions are normally ruled out. I think so far in all the years of the CAT, there is only one question where I've chosen an answer as the correct one despite the fact that it had an addition, and that was because the other options were a disaster compared to that. C gave me both the ideas. D, addition. So eliminated. So therefore our answer is C. So I hope you see the approach, right? Then we had another para summary question where B was the answer. We thereafter had this new type, the new para completion type. So how do we solve this? So I will tell you how I go about it. My step one is I read the paragraph. And you by now you know that I call that sentence that is given to us as the lost sentence. So I do not start with the lost sentence, I start with the paragraph. So let's start with the paragraph. The establishment or fabrication of pedigrees has been essential to the policing of social and racial hierarchies. Okay. The Nazis, however, made it a murderous obsession. A banal family record could be a license for advancement or a death warrant. It's probably not an overstatement. Okay, so this is basically talking about persecution of people on the basis of their race. Then I look at the lost sentence. It says genealogy is fun, but it has never been an entirely innocent pastime. So what is genealogy? Genealogy is the study of a person's family tree or ancestry, right? So it does, in a way, it introduces the topic. Now I cannot put it at 2 because it says it has never been an entirely innocent pastime. So after 2 you have a sentence that uses however, so you won't have that contrast. Then the Nazi sentence is followed by a blank, but then the sentence that comes afterwards explains that or elaborates upon that murderous obsession. So 3 is ruled out. So you're basically left with 1 or 4. Now if you put it at 4, you notice by now in this paragraph you have already established that you already know that a person's family tree can be disastrous for him, and the lost sentence gives you that idea in a more general way. So whenever you have a okay, let me just, this is one of those things that I've probably broken down as a formula, but whenever I have a sentence or a set of sentences that give me an idea in a specific manner, and then I have a sentence that hang on, I need to erase this, and then I have a sentence that gives me that same idea but in a general manner, then what should our sequence be? Our sequence should be general manner before specific manner, except in 2 situations. So what are those 2 situations? If this general sentence is framed as a conclusion, or this general sentence is framed as a reiteration, then it is in one of these 2 situations that you put it afterwards, otherwise you put it before. So in this particular case, a lost sentence is not framed as a conclusion or a reiteration, therefore location 4 is ruled out, and we'd go ahead and choose location 1. So I'm basically using the same set of things that we have used to solve para jumbles and paragraph odd one out. I think purely in terms of ability, you don't require anything new. It is only the approach or the technique that needs to be fine-tuned a bit. Shubham, mentally learn to ignore the blanks mentally. And when you do that, in fact, in a couple of questions, last year they were easy. There are times when you go from one sentence to another, you mentally ignore the blank and they're like, ये इधर कैसे आ गए, यहाँ तो नहीं आ सकते पिछले sentence से. How did we reach this sentence? We could not reach this sentence from the last one. So you automatically know that this is your likely answer. Although it was not the case in this particular passage, right? And then we had another parajumble where 4321 was the answer. I think in this parajumble, there were two things which were very obvious. 2 and 1, that was a mandatory pair. And you notice 2 talks about another attempt to write. 3 talks about putting off writing this piece, so that is one attempt to write already. So, 3 needs to come before 2. Those kind of things would have helped us arrive at this particular answer choice. Then another para summary, but I've already taken you through this. Then we had another one of those, I'd say, para completion, but this was relatively easier because the sentence had this but. And most of you would have managed to arrive at option C as the answer. No Smriti, it is not the previous year paper. This is our mock 22/All India Open Mock 4. And finally the paper ended with another one of those parajumble questions, which was once again quite easy. I think this is a question that we've already discussed during one of our YouTube sessions. So I will once again just share the answer with you. 3142. So just to recap, I have talked about the fact that we need to have an approach, and for every single question type I've helped you recap the way we need to approach that particular question type using mock 22 as a template. Here is a list of upcoming sessions. So we are not done yet. We'd give you more, and here they are right till 24th. And crash course is not the only thing that we have planned for you. There are a lot of other things planned as well. So make sure that you keep attending these sessions regularly. And of course, do not forget to join us on the 26th, where we will bring an analysis of your CAT slot. Not only that, you'll also get a score calculator and a percentile predictor. So do tune in and figure those things out immediately after your slot. So that's it from me in this particular session. I look forward to meeting you in the next one now. Until then, keep working hard, and if you need me, I'm just a message away. You can reach out to the team and me as well using these different places, right? Have a great evening ahead. It's a pleasure talking to you. Until I see you next, take care.